Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining Aveeno Baby today for their eczema equality discussion. Today, we have a panel of healthcare professionals to kind of just take us through what is eczema and teaching us how to care for and soothe our little ones that have it. This next question is for Dr. Mona. So we know that caregivers and parents, especially in underserved communities, don't always have access to dermatologists or experts or even sometimes a pediatrician. Do you know of any other resources where caregivers can go to, like the Aveeno Baby Eczema Equality Hub or anything like it, to where parents and caregivers can go to get advice and help with caring for their baby's eczema?
Yeah, I love this question because I'm a social media educator, and I think social media has potential in really
Mm-hmm.
helping people who are in underserved communities get access to knowing what eczema may look like. The obviously what Aveeno's doing with the Eczema Equality Hub and the panel here, I think is wonderful, so that they know, hey, I need to advocate for my child because yes, I saw another child who looks similar to mine have something very similar, and it looks like eczema, and no one brought it up. Maybe the doctor missed it because they're not used to seeing that in medical textbooks, right? So I think it's so
Right.
important that we can utilize social media, but it's also really important to go to the accounts run by either a pediatrician or a dermatologist who specializes in, maybe working with children. The reason being is we want that whole approach, right? Doctors, especially, pediatricians and dermatologists, we know that no child is the same with eczema. So as much as I love parents getting support from other parents, it's great to get that information and say, wow, yeah, this looks like mine, or maybe this person did something to treat their child's eczema, and then take that back to your pediatrician, take it back to the dermatologist when you do get those appointments, and have a conversation about treatment plans. Hey, I read this or I heard this. Is this something that will work for my baby? So that you can have that information that you get online, but also make sure you run it by your clinician too. Another really great place is the AAP website. So they have something called the Healthy Children website, and you can go there and search eczema, atopic dermatitis, and it will pull up articles by pediatricians that are, board certified, that really want to help advocate for children. And really, these are updated constantly. New articles are being published all the time. And I understand, I work in a very diverse population, with various socioeconomic statuses. So I respect the fact that we also have to understand that literacy is a barrier as well. So being able to read things on a phone, on the internet, this is a barrier. And I want people to be able to get whatever they need. And sometimes social media can be it, right? Visual versus actually having to
Right.
read. So I don't think we should poo-poo social media and say, oh, no one, just because you're not an expert, but take that information and take it to your pediatrician or your dermatologist. And we really, whole other issue is just getting better health access for our communities. And that's something that I'm also passionate about too. And hopefully we can change with initiatives like this.
Right. I love that. Piggybacking off of what you said, so when people are looking for a pediatrician, the moms and the parents and caregivers that have babies with eczema, is there anything specific that they should be looking for when searching for a pediatrician or expert to help with the baby's eczema?
Yeah, so I'm big on compassion. I think not just pediatricians, but every human being should have compassion. And when you're looking for a pediatrician, even if they are not an expert, quote unquote, in eczema, they should have the compassion and drive to help you figure out what we can do to optimize treatment. So finding a pediatrician who understands the emotional struggles of a family that deals with eczema. I mean, even if I don't have it with my own child, it's so important that I recognize that this is something, it's not just, okay, put some ointment and steroid cream and that's it. I get it that it itches a lot. I get it that you're losing sleep. So having an eczema action plan is what I call it, right? So we have asthma action plans, we have eczema action plans. This is like, hey, when skin is going good, here is what I need you to do. When you start to see flare-ups, here is what I need you to do. When it's getting really bad and you're seeing signs of infection, here is what you need to do. So this is something that I think is important. And if you feel like your pediatrician is wonderful, but you're not getting this help from them, you can stay with the pediatrician, but ask them, hey, I would love to see, I appreciate you, I love you, but I would love to see a specialist, right? So maybe getting that referral to see a dermatologist who does this more day in and day out and can give you that eczema action plan, can talk to you about more, higher line medicines that may be beneficial for your child. So it's really important to understand that this is a team approach, that if your pediatrician does not feel, or if you don't feel supported by your own pediatrician, either we get a referral or we say, let me get a second opinion from another clinician in the practice, because the earlier we manage this, the better, right? We don't want any child to be dismissed and say, you know what, oh, it's nothing, just put some lotion on it. No. Are we doing ointment? Are we doing lotion? What ointments are you using? What are your flare-ups? And it's so important. And advocacy is part of this as well. So it's learning how to say, I need your help. And I don't know if you're helping me, and that's fine, but where can I get this so I can take care of my baby and hopefully, get them a treatment plan that works for them.
I love that so much.
Mm-hmm.
This next question is to Carrie. What advice or what would you tell a caregiver who is feeling helpless about their baby's eczema? I think it's a consensus that all of us hate when our babies are uncomfortable. We hate, when they're in any sort of pain, any sort of uncomfortability, we hate it. So what would you give to a caregiver that's feeling helpless about their child's eczema?
I think it can feel so daunting as a parent of a child who has eczema, because as a parent, our job is to protect our children, and we always want to find the fix, the cure right now. What can we do to get rid of this? And with things like eczema, sometimes it's more of a process, and sometimes it can be trial and error to figure these things out and figure out both a routine that works for your child as well as treatments that work for your child. So it's important to kind of recognize that, okay, there are some things that we can control, like things in our day-to-day routine, our daily routine we can carry out with baby, like what we talked about, baths and dressing them in certain clothing, etc., that can really help. And then there are some things that are more out of our control, like exposure to dust and mold and pollen and things like that, that we have to kind of focus on the here and now and learn how to balance these things and really shift our focus and our attention to what can I do for my baby? Okay, so they had an exposure to some irritant, they're having a flare-up. What can I do now to help them? What can I do to relieve these symptoms for them and make them feel better? Instead of going into, I know I've been there, that like guilt and shame spiral of how did I not know that they would be exposed to this or that this would irritate them? Oh my gosh, I'm in the wrong here. I can't believe I did that. No, let's just focus on what we can do now to help our sweet little babies and kids.
Yeah. And I know I also have been in that stage of like, let me throw out all the perfumes. No one wear this.
Oh, yes,
no one wear this.
yes.
Like we just go to the extreme of like, I hate when they're uncomfortable. So now we need
Yes.
to, figure all these things out. So I also think that that's why this call is so amazing, because it gives us so many different ways of seeking that help, and things to try, because like we said, every baby is different.
Yeah.
So there are different things that could help various babies. This next question is to everyone. What piece of advice would you give to a caregiver in general of just, dealing with this journey and being on this journey? We can start with Dr. Alexis.
So I would say to really feel empowered with the knowledge, even just from the things that you may have picked up from this conference that we had today. Knowing what you can do to prevent is also really, really helpful. So we know that we should avoid harsh fragrances or other really drying ingredients. We can pick up little tips like making sure we're applying moisturizer to damp skin. So empowering yourself with all of the things that you can do to help prevent as many flares as possible is something that you can do, and just finding good resources.
I love that. Dr. Mona?
Yeah, like I said earlier, having a baby with eczema is emotionally draining. I mean, it's not even just the physical maintenance of everything. It's the watching the itch scratch cycle happen and trying to keep them comfortable. Like, both Carrie and Dr. Alexis said, it's like we want the best for our kids. And so it's not easy seeing your child itch and being uncomfortable. And I think every parent can agree to that. And so know that you're not alone, and know that there are options. And like I said, with the social media piece, right? When you see something on social, like I'm on TikTok, I'm on Instagram, and I see like all these cures for eczema. Okay. I'm like things that are like out, like, oh, I took this supplement. I want you to look at that and say, hey, this child seems to be good with their eczema, but I want you to take that to your pediatrician, take it to your dermatologist and say, I heard about this thing. What do you think? Because like I said earlier, both pediatricians and dermatologists, our goal is to keep kids out of our office. We don't want you to come in here to see us. We want you to be happy and healthy at home, and of course feel supported when you need us. But our goal is to you to be able to manage these things on your own, hopefully, and come to us if you need it. So take all the information you have, make sure you talk to someone in the medical profession before you come up with, your action plan. And, like Dr. Alexis said as well, that you want to feel supported and you want to know that there are ways that we can manage this. And it's not always easy. It's not going to be like, okay, put this ointment and it's gone tomorrow. We know that. We recognize that. And I even get sad taking care of my babies with eczema in my office because I feel like I want to do more all the time, right? Like I need to help you because I get it. It's not easy. And I hope you feel supported. I hope you understand that you're not alone, and that there is a community out there that understands what you're going through. It's including a huge portion of medical professionals.
Mm-hmm.
Right. I love that. Carrie?
Yeah, I would say, kind of as I stated before, just finding ways to implement preventative techniques in your day-to-day, kind of like Dr. Alexis said as well. What I don't think I realized in caring for my 2 eczema babies was how sometimes taking such simple measures that seem so mundane, like, okay, giving a bath or dressing my baby, it seems like a simple task, but can really make such a huge impact. And I think the other thing I would want to take away as a parent of an eczema child is knowing that sometimes it's trial and error and things happen and flare-ups happen and we figure out the best way to work through that. Okay, now next time I know XYZ. I think that is a really important takeaway here too.
Thank you guys so much for all of that. I know that if nothing, other parents and caregivers, if nothing, we feel a lot more seen even after today's call, just knowing that we're not going through this alone and it's not just our babies and there's nothing that we did to cause them this discomfort. I know that, feeling that feels so much better in itself. I know that we now have questions from the audience. So let's get straight into those. Number 1 for Dr. Alexis, this is for you. What does eczema look like on darker skin? And can a baby under 1 year present it in the crevice of their arms and legs?
Yes, so definitely you can present it anyway, right? So what we kind of went through in the beginning was just general presentation, but eczema is very unique. Every baby is very unique and it can show up anywhere that there is skin. Usually it's going to be darker than your surrounding skin. So anything that has a little bit more pigment than the surrounding skin is going to be considered hyperpigmentation, and the creases are very commonplace. It's also something that the baby can reach, right? Areas that the baby can get to a little bit faster, sooner, are the areas that tend to flare up the most because they're, scratching at them.
So the follow-up for that question would be, what's the best way to reduce the hyperpigmentation due to eczema on darker skin tones?
So for infants, anyone less than 6 months, then sun protection, meaning that you are keeping the baby from direct sun exposure, is a very good way to try and prevent hyperpigmentation. And then 6 months and older, of course, you can go ahead and implement sunscreen to those areas because sun is a huge culprit for making irritated, itchy skin more hyperpigmented.
That's very good to know. I've actually experienced that with my little ones in the summertime when she goes out, at school every single day. And I'm like, okay, we need to tag team a bit more, maybe more moisture, more whatever. Because we've noticed that with her specifically, we know baby is different, but with her specifically, the sun does irritate it just a little bit more. And this is to Dr. Mona. What is the correlation between food allergies and eczema?
I love this question because I feel like there is so much misconception about this. Okay, so it's like a chicken or the egg situation. So people with eczema often have other allergic conditions, including food allergies, but food allergies do not necessarily cause eczema. So, we talked about this earlier. Dr. Alexis mentioned this and myself, that the skin barrier, right? So the skin barrier is also part of our immune system in terms of keeping the good things in and keeping the bad things out, like Dr. Alexis said, right? But the immune system is also connected skin and gut. So a lot of our immune cells are in our abdomen or stomach, if you will. So eczema causes itching and dry skin. Very dry skin can, if you keep scratching that, can develop cracks. Okay. So some of these cracks are just too small to see. Some may bleed, some may be visible to you. When babies get food over them on themselves or crawl around, get bits of food or dust or allergens, those can get into the cracks. You don't see it, right? You can't see any of this. They're microscopic. And so then a baby's immune system may get confused, well, what is this? This is not supposed to be in my body. I'm not supposed to have peanut butter come in through my skin. That's supposed to go, somewhere else. So your baby can create an immune response, right? That from the broken skin, and this immune response can set them up for food allergies, that, oh, I saw this I was rolling around on the carpet and my older brother dropped a peanut butter cracker and that, those little particles came into my skin. I don't like this. So what do we do? How can we prevent the incidence of food allergies, So the idea is that we want to focus on that skincare, right? Dr. Alexis mentioned that we want to make sure that we moisturize the skin so we can reduce the dry cracks that happen. And then also the early introduction of allergenic foods into the gut. So the immune cells in the gut tell the skin, no, I'm in control here. You eat this food. We're going to handle this. We are going to try to create immune response that does not say that peanuts or soy or this and that is problematic. So that is why we really like the early introduction of allergenic foods for all children, but especially if you have eczema, you really want to talk to your child's clinician about, hey, when can I start the introduction of allergenic foods? Is it okay for me to start the introduction of allergenic foods? And most pediatricians will tell you, yes, I want you, once your child is showing signs of to eat, we want to introduce those foods through the mouth so that we can tell the body, don't be afraid of these foods. Don't create an allergic response to it. And then for the skin, we go downstream and we want to really moisturize before they even start solids. And that is why this is such a big picture. That is why it can be connected. And it's, as you can see, I'm very passionate about this because it's an area that I think needs a lot more research. Well, what about probiotics? What about this? What can we do to really enhance that gut microbiome, to make sure that maybe these children will not get food allergies and other atopic diseases that, like asthma, things like that. So I think it's an area of a lot of research. But remember, if you have eczema, mild, moderate, or severe, doesn't matter. I want you to really be clear with your child's clinician. When do I start introducing allergenic foods? What else can I do? It's not a true science that you do all this and there won't be any food allergies, but we really want to reduce the chance, just so that we can maybe reduce that, the foods that they can't eat. We can make that, better for everybody.
That's very, very good to know. Dr. Mona, this next question is for you as well, and it's a little bit more specific, so let me get it right. My son of South Asian descent has severe eczema and is a newborn. It cleared out for the most part, but there are flare-ups on his cheeks, lip area, and hands. He continues to itch his face and head when he goes to sleep, and hoping to understand how to treat beyond the medicated steroids. He has also tested positive for an egg and sesame allergy.
So the question would be what to do.
Yeah, basically how to help treat.
So if it's a newborn, though, you said that it was a newborn, right? I mean, it might be, is the baby a little older now? Because it sounds like because
has had a severe, older. Yeah. Has had severe eczema as a newborn, and it's cleared out for the most part, but there's still flare-ups.
Okay. Yeah. I got you. So this, depending on the age, we have to really figure out, well, what can we do depending on the age, right? An under 6-month-old, there's a lot less we can do in terms of, over 6 months, sometimes we do recommend things like Zyrtec or some sort of antihistamine to help with the itch. So depending on the age of the baby, I think it's really important to go back to your basics of skincare. What products are we using? How often are you moisturizing? With the bats, are we making sure, like what Carrie was saying, we want to dab and make sure we're not scrubbing and rubbing, and especially important to lock in that moisture afterwards, making sure that we use an I prefer ointments over lotions, but if you can do like an ointment, that would be great. Mixing it sometimes with the lotion can also help as well. But it also comes down to what are your other prescription ointments that you're using, what environment that you're living in. If you're in winter and it flares up in the winter time, are we making sure that we're not using wool items? Are we making sure that we're really sticking to cotton? Going back to, again, what are the triggers for this baby, and going back to the basics of skincare as well. And then if the baby's over 6 months, talking to the clinician about what medications to help with the itch scratch cycle that we can use. Is there anything that we should do prescription level? Obviously if there's steroid prescriptions or other things to kind of really manage this, but it is a case by case basis on, what's been working and what hasn't been working already.
Okay, that's good to know. And I think you kind of led us into the next question for you as well. Does eczema get worse in the summer?
So this is also dependent on the child. I've actually lived and practiced in 4 different states and climates. So California, Arizona, upstate New York, and New York City and Florida. So extremely different climates. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And in all areas, you can see children who flare up more in winter months and are better in the summer. And some that are worse in the summer and flare up in the winter. And it just is case by case basis. So we have to go back to really understanding what that child's trigger is. So when we talk about summer, sometimes humidity, like in Florida, for example, for some children, the humidity, it's moisture in the air, it actually helps their eczema. They look better in the summer. That another family could come into my office and tell me, once summer hits, it's all over. So then my gears start running. Well, what maybe you're kind of allergic to something in the environment, right? Because when humidity is there, maybe there's dust mites, maybe there's something in your environment that's triggering this eczema here that is, making it worse. So we really want to take this as a case by case basis. And that is why like it's really important to also have like an eczema journal or an eczema understanding of your child. Like, okay, when is it flaring up? What are the triggers? Environmentally, seasonally, if you live in an area that has seasons, when is it flaring up? Is it just worse year round? So that we can really guide the guidance here on like what we need to do to help your family for sure.
Mhm.
Yeah, and I think that this next question you've also tapped into a little bit, but I'm going to read it just so we can go back to it. Is eczema genetic? My 5-month-old son has it on his face, but neither parent has eczema. He's not bothered by it, but I would still like to understand how to treat it.
Yes. So, like I said earlier, absolutely common that we can see it before, if the parents did not have it as well. Now, I will say that, like we talked about, it could just be drier skin and not technically eczema. It's not always that every dry patch is eczema. So, if we're confused of the diagnosis, making sure that you see the clinician and making sure that's all good. Now, if it is in fact eczema, we want to make sure, which is similar to dry skin, we want to make sure that we really keep that skin moisturized, like we said, with ointments, lotions that work for the child. On the face, we want to really just use some, again, mild is better in all children with eczema. I don't like too many fragrances, as we've all said. And then really keeping an eye on when this is flaring up. Is it getting to the elbow creases? Is it getting to other parts of the body? Because then if that starts happening, we probably can say, oh, yep, we're starting to flare up a little bit. And my advice to this family is, get the help sooner than later. Meaning if you see the dryness and you haven't been told what to do based on the diagnosis, get the advice, work on that before, so we don't get it where the child gets aware of the itch, of the dryness and start scratching. Because like we said, we want to really limit that itch scratch cycle. We want to really get to a point where, under 6-month olds, maybe they do a little bit of this, but they're not, they don't have their hands going to their face so much, but we really want them, control the itching before they realize, oh, this is not comfortable, so that we can really help that cycle and reduce the chance of infection or irritation or, thickening of the skin that can happen when we scratch so much.
Yeah, that
And keep
makes
their nails
complete
cut
sense
short.
because
And keep
yes,
the nails cut short.
yes,
That's another advice that I have.
yes,
Yes, it's hard,
that
but I think every
yeah.
parent should be keeping their kids' nails short, but especially parents
Yes.
of eczema because of the itching. Yeah.
For
Mhm.
sure. And I think that that makes so much sense because with my 4-month-old, we see it on her skin, but she has not gotten to the point where she knows how and
Yes.
what to scratch.
Mhm.
So we've pretty much just taken all of our practices from the older one and we are starting to treat her as early as now because it's like when she's aware, she will be able to know how to, itch it away. So that makes
Yeah.
complete sense. This next question is for Carrie. Is it recommended to wash a baby's face with soap when they have eczema?
So if you are doing that, I would absolutely use a mild soap, as Dr. Mona said, but typically we just do water with like bamboo washcloths and then we will moisturize afterwards. My son has eczema on his cheeks and they get to the point where they're red and raw and weepy. And we have a prescription ointment that we use and then we seal it in with a balm on top of that we were recommended to use. So I like to keep things as gentle as possible. And I really think that that's the best route to go, where using a harsher or fragranted soap can cause more irritation to the skin and risk drying it out even further.
Yeah, Definitely would agree. This question also is to you, Carrie. Mother of an 18-month-old professional itcher. Once there's a flare up, how can we help prevent our kids from scratching and further harming their skin?
That's a great question because I'm in the learning process of that as well. My son's 12
Same.
months, so I'm right there with
Same.
you. I feel like Dr. Mona said, when they're little, they're not as prone to reach for their face and scratch. I try to do, moments where I distract him with different things if he is starting to go for that area, but there's only so much we can do. And I think that this comes down to more the preventative aspect and really trying to utilize practices in the day-to-day to prevent these flare-ups. But then when they happen, utilizing things that are calming for our babies, doing those more frequent, even if it's just a water bath, something to calm them down and kind of place their mind elsewhere, almost like a little bit of a distraction method. I don't know if Dr. Stevens or Amin, if you guys have any further suggestions as far as ways to help prevent that scratching as we get to more that toddler age that we're getting into now.
Yeah, distraction is always one of the best ways you can prevent that from happening. So even putting something in front of them that they have to reach for with their hands is a good way to keep their hands away from the body that's itchy.
Perfect.
Yeah, with
Okay,
our
good.
toddler, we use snacks. Snacks always
Yes.
work.
Snacks.
She's like, oh yeah, I forgot I was itching.
Yeah, I'm glad I'm not the only one that does that. My son loves
Listen,
it.
it works.
There's
every time.
100%. Yeah. I mean, absolutely. There is a psychological component of itching. Like you feel like something's on you and you feel like you need to itch. Now, obviously we understand that there is something worthy of being itched, right? We understand that this is a real thing. It's there, but yes, distractions I love. And people sometimes think that, well, no, it's there. You're obviously taking care of the skin stuff, but you are psychologically trying to just redirect their energy. And then there's things like I mentioned earlier, you have to clear it with your clinician for dosing. Things like I said, antihistamines, I'm not against it. I think like something like Zyrtec versus Benadryl is better because it's not as sedating, but sometimes we need that. I don't want us to shy away from keeping our kids comfortable if they need it. So a low dose Zyrtec is something that we do recommend over 6 months in case by case basis. There are things like wet wraps, which you probably can look up online how to make one, but this can sometimes help if it's so bad at night, while they're going to bed, they're having trouble falling asleep. It helps you put the ointment, you put the lotions that they normally do, you put like a sock over it, and you kind of you like put a moisturized like gauze so that way it like holds onto the moisture a little bit longer. These are all things that can help, but again, it's a case by case basis trying to figure out what works best for your child and their skin type and what's happening. But yes, it is tough. The itching is what we try. And then I said it again, cut your nails short. Like it's going to help with the infection risk. And that's why I really, really like get really harping on, I'm sorry, but you have to kind of cut the nail short. Like that's going to really help for the infection risk.
Yes.
That's
One of the things I did with my daughter that I learned from my son, because they're 3 years apart, was to teach her to pat really quickly as opposed to scratching.
Yeah.
And that can make a huge difference in not impairing the skin barrier so much.
Awesome.
So she learned how to pat really early. Really early.
I will definitely be teaching my little one that.
Same here. Thank you.
As soon as she gets home. Dr. Alexis, this next question is for you. Do all forms of eczema itch? My little one has patches, but they don't seem to bother her.
Nope, not every form of eczema will itch. There's actually a variety of different types of eczema, and you don't always necessarily have to have the itch. That's the most common culprit. That's how we usually find out that children have eczema, but nope, sometimes it's not itchy at all, and it can actually just present with like that pigmentation, or just like that mom said, she's seeing it, but not necessarily seeing the symptoms. So it's perfectly fine that that's the case too, but you still want to do all of the preventative measures that we talked about.
Right. And that kind of leads us into the next question of what's the best way to reduce those dark spots. I know you touched on it earlier, but if you don't mind sharing again.
Yeah. So one of the first things that you can do, and this can happen at any age, you don't have to be 6 months or older with the sunscreen, is just having sun protective measures. So whether that is an umbrella, whether that's keeping the baby in the stroller, but with, that little top umbrella part pulled over, or even if you guys are out and you're having a beach day, make sure the baby has like a little blanket over them. There's so many things that you can do, just like seek shade for hyperpigmentation. Once you're older, go ahead and of course apply the sunscreen. And then sometimes pigmentation comes from just dryness. Just dry patches on the skin can present more hyperpigmented. So using a nice balm, looking for things with like colloidal oatmeal that'll strengthen the skin barrier, but also moisturize is really important too. So moisturize, sunscreen, and seek shade.
That sounds good. The next question is for Dr. Alexis as well. Are there any significant negative effects of using steroid creams long term for eczema flare-ups?
So this is a very good question, and you definitely always want to use steroids sparingly. There are time and place for steroids. They can be extremely beneficial for a lot of children, but they can also be overused. So this is very important to actually talk with your dermatologist or your pediatrician who is prescribing them so that you have alternatives. There's other really good medicines out there that don't have the steroids in them. So you do need to have a fine balance between, hey, it's flaring and I need something for the quick fix, like a steroid, but then you also need something for the long-term benefit as well that is not steroidal.